Fenland Youth Radio.
I'm at the Eastrea Centre and I've got Professor Brian Ford, and we've had a special event today, haven't we, Brian?
Yes, we have. It's 10 years ago this year that the hall was opened, and so the committee thought, well, actually I don't know whether the committee thought it. I think people started saying to them, what are you going to do about the 10 years? So there we are. The pre-Christmas party turned out to be a 10-year celebration party, and a lot of us have got together and just shared memories of those interesting years when the hall was being built.
Now, let's step back to the very first beginnings of it. Now, I know you were obviously instrumental in the building of it, but what challenges did you have to overcome for it to be built?
The main challenge was the fact that we needed the best part of £1 million in terms of land and facilities and the actual construction. And people had been collecting for the hall for actually since 1945. But we had perhaps £20,000 or something of the sort in the bank, but we were going to need far more than that. And getting the money together was the problem. But there was another problem too, and that is that there was resistance to there being a hall in Eastrea from some of the officials elsewhere in Fenland who rather thought they'd quite like to have a nice big building for themselves. And we had remarkably little help and assistance from the officials. I will say that Dee Laws, who is the deputy mayor now of Whittlesea, Dee was the one person who stuck up and said, actually, I think Brian's idea is a good one. And she was always there offering support. But I had so many reports from people who attended council meetings saying that at Fenland and at Whittlesea, that there were voices raised against the hall as soon as I left the meeting. And I'm quite surprised that in the end we were able to fight through and win in spite of it. I mean, I felt that if we weren't going to get official endorsement, if we weren't going to get councils behind us, then we would just do it without them. And in the end, that's how it turned out to be.
And obviously today, 10 years on since it's been built, it's a place which is built to last, isn't it?
When I spoke to Robert Gregory, who was the head of Rose Homes at the time, great guy, I have a great affection for Robert. He'd agreed to build the building, and I'm afraid I was very mean to him, because I kept stipulating that everything had to be on over-specified terms. I mean, if the girders were going to be a certain size, I said, yes, but for a proper building that's going to last, they need to be that bit bigger. We've even got industrial electrical feed, three-phase feed coming to the hall. It was not built as most village halls are, which is a sort of a souped-up garage. It was built on an industrial basis, and there's no reason why it shouldn't stand here for 1,000 years at least.
So we're here, it's here to last, and it's built here 10 years ago, and you had a little bit of royalty come along to help open it in the first place.
Yes, I'm a member of the Architecture Club, and our president was the Duke of Gloucester. And I leant upon him to say that we needed to have a little royalty. Her Majesty would have come, but of course her diary was full for years ahead. And so the Queen's cousin came along and did the opening, and I must say it was a very nice occasion. We delivered, my wife and I, invitations to every house in the village to say, please come to the opening. And everybody came dressed as though for Ascot. The village looked absolutely splendid. Everybody looked terrific. We had a really great day, and I don't think anybody's forgotten that day. It was the day that royalty came to Eastrea, and it's become part of our vernacular history ever since.
So what's for the future now then?
I couldn't tell you. My job was to get the hall up and running. For the first 6 months, I organised all the bookings, and so I'd have my mobile phone with me where I was travelling around the world, and I might be at some very posh conference somewhere in some far-off country, and they get a little message from somebody saying, would April the 17th be all right for my little son's 7th birthday? And I always dealt with them professionally and in a friendly way. Do you know, I still get messages sometimes from people who booked the hall with me then and said they still remember it with pleasure. So I became not only the person who was charged with getting it up, but also the person who had to actually arrange all the bookings and shuffling together people who wanted to play cards with birthday parties, receptions, dinners and commemorative celebrations for local companies. It was a big job to fit it all together, just like a jigsaw. But it worked, and with the friendly help of the village and the wonderful support of my committee, we all got it done in the end.
Fantastic. So it's obviously something which you're very proud of.
The proudest thing, from my point of view, is it's certainly the biggest voluntary commitment I've ever had, but the proudest thing for me is the memory of Miss Tinkler. Miss Tinkler, who lived next door to where I now live, in a long since disappeared little damp thatched cottage. She started raising money in 1945 when the Second World War was still on. And I always felt to myself, well, her memory is still here. Her initiative has started. What I can do is follow her example and let's see if we can't get a hall for Eastrea. And I'm so pleased that eventually we did. And what's more, it's still here now.
And that was Professor Brian Ford.
I'm now with Richie Walton, who is the chair of the trustees of the Eastrea Centre. Richie, we've marked today with a special event, haven't we? 10 years.
It is indeed, yes. We started off back with Brian. I took over from his role several years ago now. Big shoes to fill.